Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where you are and when you are listening to this. So, today we're going to be going through the life, crimes, and mind of Ariel Castro. And that piece of music you just listened to for the intro was a snippet of my new song, An Ideal for Living, which I recently put out. And you'll find that in my videos section on my channel. So, if you want to listen to it in full, please feel free to check it out. And I hope you enjoy it. So let's get right into it all. Looking forward to this one, Jay. Epic pop culture moment event. Thanks for that, rescuer. That's very true. That's very true. That was a huge meme. The dead giveaway from Charles Ramsey was. Was certainly a pop culture moment. Although, they kind of stopped talking about him so much when it came out that he had convictions for domestic violence and various other offences. But yeah, uh, Charles Ramsey wasn't a great guy, but compared to Ariel Castro, nowhere near as bad. So let's get right into it. So a bit of background on Ariel Castro. He was born July the 10th, 1960, in Puerto Rico, and his mother and father divorced, and his father stayed in Puerto Rico. But his mother and his two brothers, they relocated to at first Pennsylvania, so the state where I've settled in. So that similarity that we both have. The first time he came to America. Well, no, going to PA wasn't my first time in America, but living there, the first time I ever moved, it was Pennsylvania. So we have that in common. Hopefully, that's the only thing. And he's also a bass player. But those are the only two things. And he spoke Spanish. And he came from a Catholic family. But those are the only things, thankfully, that me and him have in common. Very different people, thankfully. Uh, but yeah, they lived in PA for a bit, the family, and then they settled in Cleveland, Ohio, which is where he stayed from being a boy up until he was arrested and sent to prison and then took his own life. He was employed as a school bus driver for 22 years prior to his arrest. So he was doing that for years, and he was a very well liked and very well respected bus driver as well. All the kids really liked him. All the parents really liked him, and everybody in the area generally liked him. And he was. His hobbies included him being a passionate bass guitarist in several salsa bands locally, and he was considered by fellow musicians to be one of, if not the best, salsa bass guitar player in all of Cleveland, Ohio. And he certainly felt like he was a very narcissistic guy, very full of himself, but by all accounts he was a very accomplished musician and bass player. But also he had a very long history of domestic violence, and the mother of most of his children, he did have a child with one of his captives, bisexual. So, but the mother of his two children that were no, his three children that were by consent, she eventually left him and divorced him just before he no, she divorced him in the early 2000s, but she got an order of protection out against him just before he started his kidnapping and crime spree. So, yeah, and she got this because he subjected her to years of domestic violence, like bad domestic violence. But and his neighbors knew about it, like they saw her like running out and the police turning. But because um, culturally, he was in a very Puerto Rican area, very Catholic area, culturally. And I know how this is because I myself come from a Catholic background. I come from an Irish and Scottish background, but mainly Irish. So I know what this is like. And this isn't the same for all of them. But in, Catholic, socially conservative areas, a lot of the time, men, especially when it comes to domestic violence between a man and his wife, will not want to call it out or get involved in any way because it's this wrong way of thinking, sadly, that's bred into a lot of us in the Catholic world. I mean, I'm not a Catholic anymore, but I come from that world, whether I like it or not. I come from that background, and that kind of really socially conservative, ultra Catholic background can sadly lead to DV not being treated as seriously as it is, and there is like this hesitance of other men to call it out because they don't want to, impose on a man and his wife, because there's this chivalry and patriarchy that goes hand in hand with ultra Catholic and generally ultra Abrahamic religious views. The Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, in their most extreme forms, really don't think highly of women at all, and that's just the bottom line. And sadly, that can lead to this. But thankfully, his first wife was able to get away from him before he took her life or anything like that. But he subjected her to years of violence, horrible violence, and she eventually got the custody of protection against him. But his crime spree, kidnapping spree, started as soon as he got the order of protection against his ex-wife. I think at that moment he kind of gave up terrorizing her, because he had continued to terrorize her and try to turn the kids against her since the divorce. So I think he kind of gave up. And then I believe that anger that he always had, and we'll get into later why I think he is like this and why I think he was like this, but there's this sexual anger and this anger that he's always had since being a child or young adult, manifested itself and saying, look, I hate my ex-wife. I'm going to take this out on all women. And I think that's when, he started seriously, indulging his sexual sadistic proclivities. And he was, all of his captors said he was obsessed with violent bondage pornography and wanted to imitate things that he'd see in that. And I think he went from being an addict to the extreme, violent, degrading, sadistic porn. And this isn't the same for everybody. In fact, it's an overwhelming minority of people who actually watch that kind of stuff, who acted out in real life. He represents the overwhelming minority. For him, just seeing it on screen wasn't enough. He was also obsessed with prostitutes as well. So just doing it with prostitutes wasn't enough for him anymore, because prostitutes leave. And if you want to keep him round, you need loads and loads of money. And he was a school bus driver. He wasn't loaded. He didn't have the money to have prostitutes there all the time. So in his own warped, sadistic mind, he was like, right, the only way I can get my desires, sadistic and sick desires, fulfilled to the fullest is if I kidnap women and young girls and hold them in bondage. And he felt that it was his right to do that. A very narcissistic and entitled guy. He really had fucking no remorse for any of this, which is shocking. And then his crime spree started in 2002 and lasted. The kidnappings lasted from 2002 to 2004, but the women were kept there until 2013. So one of the women was there for actually 11 years by the time she was found and rescued. So you can only imagine being kept as a sex slave for 11 years and then finally getting out. I can't imagine, and I'm glad I don't know what that's like. I can't imagine how that must be to have to readjust to society and all the healing that must go on. These are some very brave and strong women, and we'll talk about them more later. From between 2002 and 4, Castro lured 3 teenage and young adult women into his car, offering them rides, and then kidnapped them and by trapping them at his home. Michelle Knight was abducted in August 2002. Amanda Berry was abducted in April 2003 at age 16. Gina and Michelle Knight was about 21 when she was abducted. Gina De Jesus was abducted April 2004, age 14. And actually, Ariel Castro was personal friends with Gina De Jesus's mother, and actually wrote songs for Gina De Jesus when she was missing, when she was, when she was missing, writing songs for her, hoping for her to come home and all this crap. Obviously like lying and shit, and would actually go and meet with Gina De Jesus's mother, asking her how she was doing and all this stuff, and feigning concern, and was very like vocally advocating for her to be found and all this stuff. And that just shows you the level of sadism of this man, that he could be friends with the woman of the whose child he's kidnapping and sexually abusing and torturing, and then write songs pretending he's concerned for her, and sit with her and show emotion like he is genuinely concerned for it. That's evil in a way that is hard, near impossible for me to comprehend how anyone could do that. And I believe that he was there and doing that for his own sick gratification. I think he was getting off to, the deception, and also I think he wanted to be, as close as he could to any potential investigation that might go on, so that he knows if the police are zeroing in on suspects or not. And he also knew Amanda Berry as well. Amanda Berry was friends with his daughter, and that's how he used that to coach her in, and get her to the house, and escape and arrest. So ultimately, on May the 6th, 2013, Castro forgot to lock the door to the house, and Amanda Berry noticed this, broke through part of the door, and screamed for help. She called law enforcement, who rescued the rest of the women, and Castro was arrested subsequently at a gas station. And this was the moment, as I said earlier, where Charles Ramsey said, "Dead giveaway. You see a little white girl running into a black man's arms, you know something's up. Dead giveaway," you know that one. And then, like I said earlier, he was seen as a big hero, but then it was later found out that he had convictions for domestic violence, so wasn't that great of a guy either. But like I said earlier, nowhere near as bad as Castro. And at trial and sentencing, Castro pleaded guilty to 937 criminal counts, including multiple counts of SA, kidnapping, and aggravated murder. Sentenced to life without parole, plus 1,000 years. He was, and then September the 3rd, 2013, yeah, sorry, yeah, I said it twice, September the 3rd, 2013, 1 month into his sentence, 53-year-old Castro hung himself in his cell. So was so much of a coward he couldn't even face his sentence, so took the easy way out, very much like Harold Shipman, who we've spoken about previously. And his home was demolished to prevent it becoming a dark tourist site, which sadly is something that does happen quite often. And I think it's kind of like I think it's important as like a true crime investigator to go to the sites of crimes, to I think understand like like how someone may have lured a victim in, how they may have concealed it, what benefits living in a particular area could have to a criminal and not, things like that. And also, like, on a more kind of spiritual level, to kind of feel if that energy, that dark energy from the crimes is still there, And it's quite common that they do knock down the homes of where atrocities, where murders have happened, and they knocked down the home of that the Moors murderers were living in. So like it's like you go down that road now in Manchester, and it's just like a block of government housing, but just with one missing plot on the end. You know what I mean? And it's just vacant. And like you go around there, and obviously none of the locals will want to talk about it, and understandably. But I appreciate that they did do that, because it would be kind of disrespectful for, because like obviously I go there with respect, and I know a lot of others would, but then there would be some that would be like, psychopaths who'd be, glorifying it and worshipping the fucking place, which is crazy. But Castro was, from his youth, didn't have a very good childhood. But at the end of the day, a lot of people have really fucked up childhoods and don't go and do what he did. And it's not an excuse, he was an adult. He had every ability to know that he had some deep rooted psychological and sexual issues, but chose not to try and get any help, chose to indulge them more and more and more. And that's a choice that you make as an adult, as a person. You can either get help when you realize something's going wrong, or you can indulge it. And he indulged it, and that's just the bottom line. No one held a gun to his head and made him do any of that. His childhood was horrible, and there's no getting around that. He was sexually abused by his mother, a male neighbour, and his uncle, and beaten by all of them as well. So he had a horrific childhood, and that sexual abuse and physical abuse, he acted it out on other students at high school, female students only. He was suspended from junior high for groping and molesting a female student. So yeah, he I think if more was done, for him from a young age, maybe he could have maybe he could have gotten some help and whatever. But I think, but he did, he easily knew what happened to him wasn't normal, and the way he was acting was directly because of that unresolved, unhealed, unaddressed trauma. It doesn't take an Einstein or a top end psychiatrist to figure that out. It's pretty easy to see what was going on, but he just dismissed that for whatever, or just didn't want to address it. Too painful, maybe too hard, and he was a weak person in the fact that he was unable to address it and allow himself to just act out and do the things that was done to him as a child to others, which is depraved. And to me, it makes no logical sense. He knew how sick that was, but then I think maybe in his head he thought, right, this was done to me, I have the right to go and do this to others. The world did this to me, I'm going to go do it to the world. And that's a very uh, wrong way of thinking. None of the women who he held captive, none of the girls who he held captive went out afterwards and re-victimized people. They all work in advocacy work now. They're all devoting their lives to healing, but also to raising awareness about this kind of thing and getting people help and stuff like that. So you have a choice as a Back, everybody. Sorry. Oh yeah. Am I back? Am I back, everybody? Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry, my phone died, and I'm back now. Hi, Crowbar. Hope you can hear me. And yeah, my phone. Yeah, thank God. Yeah, great. Yeah, my phone died, and my picture's not thing for some whatever reason, but who cares? Yeah, my phone died, and that happens a lot when I'm live, sadly. But we're back now. So yeah, as I was saying, Castro's abuse in his childhood, uh, that really did shape him, and it warped his understanding of sex. But anyone anyone who becomes an adult should know that what he was doing, the way he was thinking, was rooted in his abuse, was rooted in all that. That if he never tried to get psychiatric help ever from anybody, and you're just asking for bad stuff to happen when you do that, when you just try to ignore it. But yeah, I personally, I don't think that he would have done what he did if he'd have actually gotten some psychiatric help and tried to heal from his childhood trauma, but he just didn't want to. There's a difference, you've got to be brave, you've got to be strong to confront these things. And I don't think and Ariel Castro was neither brave nor strong. He chose the coward's way out. He decided to become the very thing that ruined him, basically, which is the ultimate betrayal, I think, to himself and the world. And it's just horrific. Yeah, and Emily Castro as well. Oh, hi, Cher. Glad you could join us. Glad you could join us. And I'll put the link out for you or anyone who wants to come and join us. I would love that. And I'm glad Hoodies and Crowbar is here, and Nasty Meal and everybody. But yeah, we're talking about Ariel Castro, and such a crazy case, such a like a crazy guy. And as well, his apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. One of his daughters uh, uh, was one of his daughters was actually arrested and is doing 25 years for Emily Castro, actually. And Emily Castro was the one who Amanda Berry knew. And the fact that the way he got Amanda Berry at his place was she needed a ride. Oh yeah, my pick. My phone died. I had to rejoin afterwards, and for whatever reason, sometimes when you rejoin afterwards, it doesn't put your pick up, or I didn't put it up in time or whatever. It's StreamYards is kind of weird with all that. But yeah, I'm back. I'm here. But yeah, yeah. Emily Castro was friends or knew Amanda Berry, and Ariel was like, "Oh yeah, I'll give you a ride back to your place, Amanda." And yeah, Emily's there, and I'll give you a puppy for your son. And then there was no puppy there, and Emily wasn't there, and that's when he got Amanda Berry uh, into his captivity. But Emily Castro, his daughter, uh, was actually his daughter that he had with his ex-wife, Grimilda Figueroa. And Emily, who we talked about earlier, who had to get an order of protection against him. Emily was sentenced to 25 years in an Indiana prison in 2008 for, get this is horrific, so trigger warning, slashing her own 11-month-old baby's throat in April 2007. She was diagnosed with severe mental illness. So, and I think it's fair to say that it's probably likely that he was that Castro was abusing his own daughters, Emily Castro, probably, and she, like her father, I think, took the coward's road in life. When you're handed a trauma, these two, Emily and Ariel, I nearly called him Fidel Castro. Emily and Ariel uh, chose the coward's way out by, instead of trying to heal, they, put that pain out onto someone else, someone innocent, someone defenseless, and that's just as sick and evil as what was done to them, and it makes them just as bad as the people that abused them, and that's a sick cycle. And you've got to be strong, and you've got to be morally upright to be able to break that. And it isn't, you know, um, I don't believe that the abuse. I think that people who don't address their own abuse or trauma are susceptible to becoming abusers in later life. I think that's true, sure. And other two daughters called him evil, violent, and demonic. So yeah, it's safe to say that he was probably abusing all of them along with their mother for most of their childhoods as well. And it's said that his wife Grimilda felt like a prisoner when she was married to him. So this pattern of keeping women captive and held in bondage was something that was well established to him, and something that he perfected pretty well. Keeping women, controlling women, dominating women, breaking their spirits, victimizing them. Trauma-based mind control in its most naked sense. That's what he was employing here. Ian Brady, the Moors murderer, employed trauma-based mind control on Myra Hindley to keep her in line with how he wanted her to be. So he'd use sadism, and Castro as well would do this. He would use sadism, abuse, to weaken the spirits of his captives, to make them more submissive, more conditioned to him. And if they, in any sense, broke against his most trivial of wish, they would be met with violent abuse. So it's that conditioning to make them acceptant and tolerant, and even Castro himself wanted the women, the captives, the girls, to pretend or at least show that they wanted this. That in Castro's mind, warped mind, that they wanted this. You know what I mean? And that's probably how he justified it to himself, that they were asking for it and that it's his right to do these kinds of things. And had another daughter as well via SA with one of his captives, Amanda Berry, who was born in 2006, called Jocelyn. And she's now an adult and still living with her mother and is healing. And Amanda says that she always says to Jocelyn, you're nothing like your father. You're good and you're pure. You know what I mean? So don't ever let anyone tell you you're doomed to be just like your dad. You're just like me. You know what I mean? And I think it's beautiful and brilliant that even in that horrific situation, that Amanda's nature of being a caring mother never broke. She had she had a son when she was kidnapped and was a young mother, and during that time, despite being taken away from her son, she had this new child, obviously born out of a horrific experience, but she always felt that Jocelyn, and the hope of having to keep with it for for her other son as well, was what kept her going. That love for them both, and she also had a dog as well that Castro let her have for being submissive to him as a reward, as a part of the grooming, the psychological control. And then one time when he was abusing her, the dog stood up for her and tried to defend Amanda, as dogs do. And then Castro snapped the poor dog's neck. That's the kind of sick bastard that he was. And he also, murdered other, children of his victims. Jocelyn was the only one that survived. Other women, had children that he murdered. murdered. He murdered them. That's basic what he did. He induced abortions and murdered them. But bottom line, it was murder in my view. What he did to them, and he was charged with murder as well. Um, and that's the type of sick bastard he was. Um, evil, evil, killing babies and dogs, and abusing women, and girls as well. Like his youngest captive was 14. He was a paedophile as well, and he actually, was pissed that Amanda Berry was older than he actually thought she was. He thought she was significantly younger than she actually was, because she did look she still looks younger. She's small, she looks younger than she actually is, and it pissed him off that she wasn't as young as he actually thought she was, and that's how he's everything bad that you can be. This guy is or was, and it's just really fucked up going through what he did. But we have to do it. We have to do it. The grim reality is there are men and women right now who have children or adults captive in their homes or on their properties, not just in some distant land in Latin America or Africa or Asia, right here in the West, maybe even in your own town or city, maybe one of your neighbors. Castro, although he was seen as a bit of a guy who was, had a history of abusing his wife, no one in his area thought that he was a sadistic sex sadist and murderer and abuser. He was a trusted school bus driver. He was trusted to be around children, and he was himself a paedophile, as well as a bunch of other things, none of them good. He had ultimate trust. He was very well respected in the Hispanic community and the Puerto Rican community in Cleveland, Ohio, and in the local Catholic community. He was a regular churchgoer. He was a devout Catholic. Well, seemingly, he presented the image of a devout Catholic. And this is all about becoming untouchable in your own little way, becoming a person that could never be suspected of the things that he was doing, gaining social capital. So, the man on the street, the woman on the street may seem perfectly normal, but you never know what is going on behind closed doors. And what people said after this is, if you see something, say something. And that's the biggest thing. Amanda Berry was waving at people at times when she was held captive, trying to make, to get their attention. But, they never thought, oh, she's being held captive. They thought, oh, she's just saying hi to him, you know what I mean? Or whatever. Or she's drunk, or she's whacked out, whatever. But if you see something, say something. Because, I'm not trying to get you all paranoid here. But the reality is, he got away with this for 11 years in suburbia, in suburban Cleveland, in a pretty nice area as well. This can happen anywhere, and it happens way more than anybody wants to admit. Now more than ever, human trafficking and keeping people captive and modern slavery, sex slavery, is in the news because of Epstein and all of this kind of stuff. It's not all people who are rich and powerful and have their own little islands. These are people that we have to be the most worried about, because they have the ability to get away with it a lot easier and do it on a much grander scale. But there are others like Ariel Castro who, just as evil, and given that level of, power and access and respectability, would have been just as prolific, if not more. So we've got to be, if you see something, say something, is what I believe in firmly. And he was considered by experts to be a narcissistic sociopath, not a schizophrenic, not a psychotic, not. I think the grim reality is he was. He wasn't like a lot of other people who suffered from child abuse, where a lot of them they replay it in their head every day, sadly, like a constant nightmare, and most of their day inside their own head, although most of them don't show it, is trying to get rid of that by whatever means necessary, and to forget it, And but for him, I think he was, clearly psychologically affected by it, but I don't think he let it burden him. I think he was just hyper fixated on in his mind, in his own really fucked up way, taking his power back. So basically saying, I'm not a victim, I'm an abuser, I'm a predator. You can't abuse a predator. So that was his own fucked up way of dealing with it all. And yeah, wow, Hoddies. That's so like BTK, Dennis Rader blends in with the rest of us. So many of them walk amongst us. That's completely true. Dennis Rader, him, Ian Brady, Harold Shipman, all of them. Very few serial killers or sexual sadists don't fit in well and aren't well respected, because they have to be. They have to be effective at what they do. They know that. They know it very well. And obviously you do get people who are, on the dregs of society and commit these crimes, but they're oftentimes caught a lot quicker than people who aren't, and that's what it is, and yeah, Castro, on his psychological diagnosis, narcissistic sociopath with an obsession with sexual sadism rooted in his own childhood sex abuse and physical abuse, and his own inability to deal with it in a healthy or productive way. The mindset of, the world did this to me, I'm going to go do this to the world. Very, very dangerous, and not an ounce of remorse in him at all about what he did. And he demonstrated that in the trial. And another sad thing about this case is the fact that Amanda Berry's mother, LaVarna Miller, who, ever since her daughter Amanda went missing, was a major advocate for her, keeping her name out there and keeping her story out there in the media to raise awareness, and for other missing people as well, and missing children. And sadly, she died of cancer in March 2006, not knowing the truth about what actually happened to her daughter. And before her death, she appeared on the Montel Williams show, which was a trash show, in my view, an absolute piece of shit show, Montel Williams show, and where Sylvia Brown lied to her and said, supposed psychic, aka, I believe that there are real psychics out there, but Sylvia Brown certainly wasn't one of them. Sylvia Brown was a fraudster and an evil fraudster, and Sylvia Brown lied to her, saying that her daughter was dead, and that she would only see her in heaven, which is horrific. So sadly, LaVarna died not knowing that her daughter was actually still alive, which is horrific. And Michelle Knight was held 11 years, longest of them all, and has since changed her name to Lily Rose Lee, and has become a well-respected author and advocate for healing from trauma and mental health advocacy. And also Gina De Jesus, after getting out, co-founded a non-for-profit organization in Cleveland to help missing people and the families of missing people. And Amanda Berry is raising her daughter and doing advocacy work too. So all the women, ever since they got out, have responded to the trauma with strength, with courage, with wisdom, with dignity. And Ariel responded to his trauma in none of those ways. Those women, they're absolute gems. They represent the pinnacle of strength to me. Strength, and I said this on Daily Dose of Donna in the chat a few weeks ago regarding Karen Reid. Strength to me doesn't mean that you can beat up a load of people. That's an abstract thing. Anyone can take loads of roids and beef themselves up and beat the fuck out of people. That's easy. But to be dealt such a horrific hand in life, to go through over a decade of constant sex abuse and physical abuse and, control and domination, and to go through all that and to not let it destroy who you are, but to heal from it and to use that pain and turn it into something good like advocacy work is alchemy in its truest form. And only the strongest of people, only the strongest of souls can perform that. And that, in my view, is the strongest people in the world who can gain strength from adversity. Pathemathos, strength and wisdom from adversity. And that, in my view, is the most truest and honest form of strength. And I can't commend all these women enough. And if I ever have the privilege of ever meeting any of them, I would shake their hands and tell them how amazing they are and how they are my heroes and people who, all kinds of people. Dave Grohl talks about the song My Hero and how it's about ordinary people and how his heroes are ordinary people, everyday people. And for me, that's the same. My heroes are, people, one of our moderators who I'm incredibly close with, Val Knox. She's a hero to me. She's been through so much stuff with horrible stuff that she's talked about on her channel and health struggles. And she's not some celebrity, she's a hero to me. And other people, Cher, Voices Behind the Wall, who was in the chat, is another hero to me. She's been through so much, and she's never let that adversity change her as a person. Same with Val, and same with so many others. These are the people who are my heroes. These are the people who I look at and say, I want to be that strong. These people are solid. You know what I mean? And I think they're great. And it's the same. Like as a kid, like my heroes were like soccer players, rugby players, gangsters even. But now, as an adult, you see, the people who are most worthy of adoration are not celebrities, are not people on the TV. Are these people who are in their own way spreading light, spreading healing, and showing strength throughout the world. Those are the heroes. Those are the people who deserve commended. Thank you, Amber. I know you're in you're at the parlor at the moment, but thank you for still fulfilling your mod duties very much. And Amber, you're a hero of mine as well. Not to get into any details, but I know you've been through your own stuff, and you really inspire me very much. And Sylvia Brown was vile and exploited people in active trauma. Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I'm into spirituality. I do rituals. I've seen spiritual entities, tarot, all this stuff. But I could never, and I would never say to somebody, I can guarantee you, I can give you some insight about your family. My insights are always about me. You know what I mean? It's very rare that people can have insights about others. When I say they're about me and people who are in my kind of social circle. If I don't know somebody, there's no chance I'm going to really get some kind of spiritual insight. You know what I mean? I can do kind of like go into a house and pick up an energy like on an empath level, but I'm not going to be able to tell you where your missing daughter is or anything like that. I've had a bit of intuition before. Like there was that girl who went missing and nobody knew where she was, and her father took his own life, and then she wound up in Mexico. Yeah, Val, who is our moderator here, will attest to the fact that I said that I think she was in Mexico before that came out. But I don't really think that that's really psychical ability. I just think it's sporadic intuition. You know what I mean? And I can't put a rule to it. So anyone who says, oh, I can 100% always know this and that, they're lying to you. It's not a science like that. The paranormal, the spiritual, it isn't like a tap. You can't turn it on and off. You know what I mean? It defies logic. You know what I mean? So anyone trying to put a logic to it is lying to you. And Sylvia represents the worst of the worst in that field. The most predatory, the most evil. She was one of the types. It's proven that lines were being fed to her during her quote unquote readings. So yeah, buyers beware when it comes to that sort of stuff. And anyone who claims to give you absolutes when it comes to matters of the spiritual is lying to you, because there's no absolutes in that world. Very few. Take it from me. And if you think that we as human beings can have this full and complex understanding of things like that, then you're very naive. We're not as evolved as we think we are. I think, we're very naive. And I think Sylvia Brown had that deep, raspy voice like Benny Loco. Yeah, I completely agree. And Stern used to rip on Sylvia Brown a lot. I remember that. Howard Stern used to rip on her all the time. And yeah, yeah, she was a real nasty piece of work. And yeah, but it just shows you like the kind of anytime there's that psychic that on YouTube, that psychic Donna, not Daily Dose of Donna, who is a friend of the channel and a very cool lady. This other woman called Donna the Psychic, or whatever the fuck her dumb name is. But yeah, she's like pretty known in the true crime world of just saying bullshit about cases. And just like using people's tragedies to just say outright speculatory, potentially libelous statements as if they are outright fact. And yeah, she's a woman you gotta be wary of. And these types are everywhere, and it pisses me off because whenever you mention like spirituality or anything like that, people immediately go to, oh, you're some kind of fucking charlatan, aren't you? You know what I mean? It is pretty disheartening, and but yeah, I'm not asking for any money off anybody or anything like that, and I'm not giving anybody absolutes. So I make it clear, if you want to find something out, you've got to do it yourself. And, and if you want to open yourself up to that spiritual world, you've got to be wary of what can come with it. It's not for fucking around with, that's for sure. And personally, I think that there are higher powers, gods, spirits, entities, and all that. And I think they especially don't like people like Sylvia Brown and other charlatans, especially because they're making a mockery of them. And they're lying about them. So yeah, I'm not anti-psychic, but I'm very skeptical of most psychics. In fact, despite me believing in the paranormal in general, I'm skeptical of when somebody tells me they've had an experience, because most of the time it isn't that. It's only like 0.0001% of the time where that even is the case. I'm not. Most people, are very gullible in that world, sadly, and just because something there's a bang in the night doesn't make it a ghost or anything like that. Yeah, so that's a nasty aspect and side note of the case, and I think I'm glad as a society we've kind of moved on from that to a great degree, where these people are, these obvious frauds are given, such, praise and treated like, their word is the gospel, and all this kind of shit. Um, but yeah, Castro was found out in the end, human error, which what got him, and it was this. It's the same with seemingly all of these guys who have sexual sadists, murderers. It's always human error. They position themselves. They think of themselves as being very smart, and they get sloppy, and they take it for granted that they've gotten away with something for a while, and that their caution, their cunning slips, and just simple human error of you forgot to lock the door. And Amanda Berry noticed that Castro, got found out, and the whole thing blew open. And it's the same with Ian Brady. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley let in Myra's brother-in-law into the whole thing, assuming that he would be cool with it, and murdered a guy in front of him, and he wasn't cool with it. And then he told the police about it, and that blew their whole thing. And Harold Shipman, human error, did a fucking really shoddy, poorly typed out fraudulent will, which opened up the whole can of nests about his massive murdering spree. So all of these guys are caught out by themselves, and that's kind of worrying. It's very rare that it's great police work that finds these people. It's moderately okay police work that convicts them, but it's rarely great police work that finds them, and that bothers me. What the fuck are the detectives and the police there for if they're not to detect crimes? If it takes, the perpetrator to fuck up for them to be caught, And I know it's like certain things. It's like you can't just bolster into anyone's house. This isn't the DPRK. This isn't North Korea, where you can just go in and search everywhere and do what you like. The authorities can just do what the fuck they like. There's no, there's no one for them to answer to if they're following orders from the big boss, Kim Jong Un. You know what I mean? In an authoritarian society like that, and I get that, but in this day and age, with CCTV, DNA, crime databases, psychological profilers, all of what we've got now, it shouldn't be that big cases where serious crimes have been going on for a while. Fucking Brian Koberger, another guy, another recent guy, and he did it not too far away from where this happened. It's where Castro's crimes happened. Another guy, another killer, another criminal caught out by his own human error, putting in for looking into his genealogy, putting his DNA into the system, gonna hit. If he hadn't have done that, there's a good chance he wouldn't have been caught. Because it's crazy to think, and the detective capabilities in our society are so low, are so low, despite everything we've got, and that 9 times out of 10, these big cases are solved by human error, by a perpetrator being stupid. And what about all the times where the killer or the rapist or the abductor or the child abuser or the child pornographer isn't stupid? Because these people generally aren't. They're generally very cunning, very manipulative, and very evil, and very fixated on doing what they're doing. It's the only thing that really brings them any joy in life, as fucked up as that may seem. It's the truth for a lot of these people. And it's the people that aren't stupid that we have to figure out how we can detect better, and things like that, because it does concern me. And I'd be interested to see what you guys think in the chat. how often in true crime do we see that these cases aren't cracked by great police work, that it is a human error, that anyone could have figured out who did it, and how many times are they impeded as well, and how many times is there fuckery in the investigations, and overreach and interference. It's all the time. And thankfully, though, Castro was eventually caught. But like I said, the thing is, he should have been a suspect. He latched him. He was known by two of the missing women, and they were missing. Two of his captives he was known to. So yeah, known to them. Had a history of violence against women. Now, just because you beat women doesn't mean you kidnap them and all that kind of stuff. But it means that you're in that category of a man who, it isn't beyond doing harm to women. So yes, putting all that, and the fact was that he was, also quite reclusive and defensive about his own home. So friends of his, when they'd come over, they'd sit in his yard and stuff like that. And when his mother came to visit him, he'd like talk to her through the window, like he rarely, if ever, had anybody at or in his house. And that's really suspicious. So it doesn't take freaking Sherlock Holmes to put two and two together and put this guy in the frame for possibly needing to be looked into about these missing girls, considering he was known to two of them, known to the majority of them prior to him abducting them. So it beggars belief, and he was never looked into by the police. And it's this type of lackadaisical, low effort investigations into missing people, missing children even, that make it so that people like Ariel Castro think, oh, I could easily get away with this, And to be fair, he got away with it for 11, for not for 11, yeah, for 11 years. Yeah, for 11 years. Started in 2002, was caught in 2013, doing it for 11 years. He did get away with it for over a decade. And this wasn't, like I said, this wasn't back in, the 1800s or the early 20th century. This was in the 21st century. And he got away with it in suburbia, not in some rural, absolutely place in the middle of the sticks. You know what I mean? Where there's no neighbours. Yeah, plenty of neighbours. He shouldn't have been able to get away with it for so long, is what I'm saying. And we have to learn from this. See something, say something, don't hesitate. And that's my closing message for all this. Thank you, everybody, for making it and for listening. And I hope anyone who's listening to the replay, leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts about the case, about Castro, about his mental state, about his survivors, about the journey they've overcome, or about trauma or abuse in general. And feel free to share any thoughts or observations about the live or about the topic discussed. And thank you, everyone, for being here, making it a great live and being really good in the chat, in terms of talking interactive with the live and on the subject. It's been a really good one, but difficult one to discuss as usual. And as for my upcoming lives, I will certainly be doing a live soon about the adult entertainment industry and about some of the dark side of that and the exploitation that goes on in it. Like, I'm not against people who want to do pornography doing it, so long as they're not being abused, taken advantage of, forced to do something, drugged, anything like that, taken advantage of in any kind of way, so long as it's on their terms and they're not, being taken advantage of, and they understand, some of the trauma that can happen, and some of the negative side effects that can happen as a result of that, and they're not coming into it as naive young, 19-year-old 20 somethings, but they're going into it with full informed consent, knowing what they're doing, not being pressured into it by anyone. So hopefully I'll be doing that live soon, probably maybe on Sunday, maybe Monday, one of the two. And so yeah, it will be in the coming next few days, and hopefully get on some adult entertainers to maybe share some of their stories as well. I'm going to try my best with that. I can't promise that I will be able to, but I'm going to try and reach out to some, and see if they're willing to, share some of their stories, and I'll, show them the respect that they deserve, because society, they looks at like sex workers, whether it be escorts, or adult entertainers, as like shit. You know what I mean? And I would love Scarlett Hampton on the show. I would love to get Scarlett Hampton on the show. I really like Scarlett Hampton. I'm proud of what she's come through and been through. Not what she's been able to get through. Scarlett Hampton, for those of you who don't know, is an ex-adult entertainer, an escort, and she said herself that she was pressured into the industry, pressured to do scenes she didn't want to do a lot of the time, and felt like she didn't have any option. Struggled with substance abuse issues and mental health issues as a result, and and as a result of that, like, she's become, very wanting to shed a light on the realities of the porn industry and of adult entertainment, and some of the like sinister people at the top, who really have a really insidious and parasitical and really evil and predatory agenda, and look at these women and men as just being pieces of meat, you know what I mean, not human beings, and try to put it out into society, this perception that these people are trash, and that are fucking, worth hating, and are worth degrading, and that they're not really human beings. So if you want to assault them, if you want to murder them, it's okay. And that, that's why, like, Gilgo Beach happens, where that guy was targeting sex workers because of that perception that's put out there, and the people that are behind that perception are ironically the very people who are, the leaders of pornography, the top guys in it, will like that perception, like the degrading, like the dehumanizing. They say, oh, it's all about empowering women, and some women can, I think, be empowered by pornography and certain types of pornography. But when they're being, degraded and really, horribly treated, violently, even, you can only see it one way. Yeah. All you have to do is DM her, explain that you'll show her respect. She won't even charge. Yeah, I'll try and reach out to her on Twitter, because I do follow her on X, but I don't really use my X very often, so I'll try that. Maybe she'll see it, maybe she won't. But yeah, I think probably that's probably the best way to reach out to her. But yeah, if you could reach out to her, if if that would work, if she'd be more likely to see it, I'll try. I'll do it, because I have spoken with Scarlett Hampton before, because she's a fan of the Steel Toe Morning Show. Aaron Imholt, who's a friend of mine, and Aaron has his own skeletons in his own closet and isn't a perfect person by any means. Nobody is, but he's owned his shortcomings, and he's paid his debts to society, about his, because of his stupid actions, and he's learned from them, and he's learned from all of the nonsense that he got himself involved with, and that's what I believe in. I believe people deserve second chances, and deserve to, so long as what they did wasn't that bad, and so long as they, they take ownership of what they did, and things like that, which he has, I think, and Scarlett, like, she's come through all that, and yeah, I've spoken to her in the Steel Toe chat before, She's cool. She's going through a lot because people do. I didn't know she went on Stuttering John's. Did Stuttering John try and have sex with her? I'm actually, I didn't mention it to you, Nasty Meal, but I actually spoke to John the other day or the other week, last week actually. Stuttering John from Howard Stern and the Tonight Show, for those of you who don't know. And I was speaking with him on Facebook DMs, and we patched things up. You know what I mean? Because we had a little bit of a beef because he was being a bit of a dick. But we patched things up, and we understand each other, and everything's fine again. Well, no, but he white knighted for her and said he wanted to kick Matt Mead's ass. He's like, yes, Scarlett, I'll be right down there and I'll kick Matt Mead's ass for you. Yeah, skull. It's important that we have a balance in this show because we've just been talking about a guy who held women captive and was murdering their babies and all kinds of shit. So this is why at the end, after all that, I have to talk about some dumb shit. Scarlett, obviously, it's very serious about what Scarlett's been through, and it links to my next future live. But yeah, I really want Scarlett on. I will try to get Scarlett on. She's very nice. She's very understanding, and she's good to speak to, and she's quite insightful and is a lot smarter than people give her credit for. And she's more than what she did in porn. That doesn't define her. And if you think about it, I think that counts as what happened as sexual assault. I don't think she really fully consented to any of that. I think she was groomed. I think she was brainwashed. I think she was exploited. And I think she felt she had no way out. And her self-worth was so lowered. I think that's the sad reality for a lot of people in porn. And I think that those people shouldn't be doing it, but I think people who, are doing it for they like doing it, they're not being exploited, by all means, do it. And I think that when you do it and you're not in bondage to some company or some agent, when you're on your own doing it, setting your own terms, setting your own boundaries, that's perfectly healthy and fine for people who want to do that. But it's when you get in these companies and these agents and all this shit where the real dark sides come out. So that's why I have a bit of a mixed view about OnlyFans. On the one hand, it isn't great because it really is degenerative stuff, a lot of it. But on the other hand, there's always going to be porn. There's always going to be people who want to do it. So it's better they do it through OnlyFans, where it's not a production company. They haven't got an agent. They can set their terms. I think it is a lesser of two evils ultimately. But like I said, I don't think that porn generally is evil, but I think that a lot of people producing it are and have evil intentions with it. And that's a sad reality. Scarlett is a nice person. I don't like people making fun of her. She's a very broken, traumatized person. That's the truth, and anyone watching her and, like when she does live streams or whatever in the relationships that she's been in, the troubled relationships, you can see that every day is a struggle for her. And you're not a big man if you're just bullying, she's very small. She's not a big, she's a very small woman. She's young. You're not a tough guy if you're picking on Scarlett Hampton. You're just not. You know what I mean? It's not a good look at all. Instead of vilifying these people, let's just treat them with some fucking compassion. Let's treat them with some compassion. You know what I mean? Would it be so wrong in society if we were a little bit more compassionate with people? You know what I mean? If we were a little more understanding of people, I don't think that would be a terrible thing. But the internet can be a cruel and sadistic place. And sadly, Scarlett ends up on shows that really take advantage of her, and people yell abuse at her and shame her and all this kind of stuff. And like I said, if Scarlett, if you get this sent to you, Nasty Meal, I'd love it if you sent this to her or whatever. If you get this sent to you, if you hear this part, you'll be fully respected, and I'll let you say your story in full without any censorship, and you'll be fully allowed to do that. And yeah, can we get your thoughts on Shuli's DMCA lawsuit having over 90 grammatical and spelling errors, including Shuli's lawyer misspelling his own name 2 times? Where did Shuli get his lawyer? Reddit. No. Shuli's lawyer was anyone who's seen the show Hardcore Porn, where there's that guy and his kids, where they're running that really funny porn stop in Detroit, in Detroit, and like it's really ghetto where the customers are, and it's in like a really rough part of Chicago. One of the customers was running a scam and brought a quote unquote lawyer, aka some crackhead who just put on a suit and claimed to be a lawyer to represent them in some dispute. It was all a load of bullshit. But yeah, I'm thinking Shuli's lawyer is probably cut from that cloth because, yeah, I mean, the guy's got to have like no fucking money. You know what I mean? Like, he's Jesus Christ, Shuli. Cut your losses and just stop with the whole thing. Yeah, but yeah, that's all I have to say about that. But yeah, after a serious discussion and a slight diversion to the comical, we end now. But yeah, thank you everyone for sticking with me. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And like I've been saying, like I just said, hopefully live stream in the next few days, Monday, Sunday, one of those days, about the adult entertainment industry. Hopefully get Scarlett Hampton. Hopefully get somebody else maybe as well. But prioritize Scarlett Hampton because I've already chatted with her in Steel Toes live chat before, and she kind of knows who I am vaguely. Yeah, and that's doable. So hopefully we'll have a special guest, Scarlett, and hope you'll all join us for that. So yeah. See you all, and hope you have a great weekend, and Feliz el fin de semana to our Spanish speakers who are listening. See you all.